A parachute is a device used to slow the motion of an object through an atmosphere by creating drag. Parachutes are usually made out of light, strong fabric, originally silk, now most commonly nylon. They are typically dome-shaped, but vary, with rectangles, inverted domes, and others found. A variety of loads are attached to parachutes, including people, food, equipment, space capsules, and bombs. In 852, in Córdoba, Spain, the Moorish man Armin Furman attempted unsuccessfully to fly by jumping from a tower while wearing a large cloak. It was recorded that there was enough air in the folds of his cloak to prevent great injury when he reached the ground. The earliest evidence for the true parachute dates back to the Renaissance period. The oldest parachute design appears in an anonymous manuscript from 1470s Renaissance Italy, showing a free-hanging man clutching a crossbar frame attached to a conical canopy. As a safety measure, 4 straps ran from the ends of the rods to a waist belt. The design is a marked improvement over another folio, which depicts a man trying to break the force of his fall using 2 long cloth streamers fastened to 2 bars, which he grips with his hands. Although the surface area of the parachute design appears to be too small to offer effective air resistance and the wooden base frame is superfluous and potentially harmful, the basic concept of a working parachute is apparent. Shortly after, a more sophisticated parachute was sketched by the polymath Leonardo da Vinci in his Codex Atlanticus dated to ca. 1485. Here, the scale of the parachute is in a more favorable proportion to the weight of the jumper. Leonardo's canopy was held open by a square wooden frame, which alters the shape of the parachute from conical to pyramidal. It is not known whether the Italian inventor was influenced by the earlier design, but he may have learned about the idea through the intensive oral communication among artist-engineers of the time. The feasibility of Leonardo's pyramidal design was successfully tested in 2000 by Briton Adrian Nicholas and again in 2008 by the Swiss skydiver Olivier Vietti-Tepper. According to the historian of technology Lynn White, these conical and pyramidal designs, much more elaborate than early artistic jumps with rigid parasols in Asia, mark the origin of the parachute as we know it. The Venetian polymath and inventor Fausto Verenzio, alongside a number of other devices and technical concepts. It was once widely believed that in 1617, Verenzio, then aged 65 and seriously ill, implemented his design and tested the parachute by jumping from St. Mark's Campanile, from a bridge nearby, or from St. Martin's Cathedral in Bratislava. In various publications it was incorrectly claimed the event was documented some 30 years later by John Wilkins, founder and secretary of the Royal Society in London, in his book Mathematical Magic or The Wonders That May Be Performed by Mechanical Geometry, published in London in 1648. However, Wilkins wrote about flying, not parachutes, and does not mention Verenzio, a parachute jump, or any event in 1617. Doubts about this test, which include a lack of written evidence, suggest it never occurred, and was instead a misreading of historical notes. The modern parachute was invented in the late 18th century by Louis Sébastien Lenormand in France, who made the first recorded public jump in 1783. Lenormand also sketched his device beforehand. 2 years later, in 1785, Lenormand coined the word parachute by hybridizing an Italian prefix para, an imperative form of parere equals to avert, defend, resist, guard, shield or shroud, from paro equals to parry, and shoot, the French word for fall, to describe the aeronautical device's real function. Also in 1785, Jean-Pierre Blanchard demonstrated it as a means of safely disembarking from a hot air balloon. While Blanchard's first parachute demonstrations were conducted with a dog as the passenger, he later claimed to have had the opportunity to try it himself in 1793 when his hot air balloon ruptured and he used a parachute to descend. Subsequent development of the parachute focused on it becoming more compact, while the early parachutes were made of linen stretched over a wooden frame. In the late 1790s, Blanchard began making parachutes from folded silk, taking advantage of silk's strength and light weight. In 1797, André Garnerin made the first descent of a frameless parachute covered in silk. In 1804, Jerome Lalande introduced a vent in the canopy to eliminate violent oscillations. In 1887, Park Van Tassel and Thomas Scott Baldwin invented a parachute in San Francisco, California, with Baldwin making the first successful parachute jump in the western United States. In 1907, Charles Broderick demonstrated two key advances in the parachute he used to jump from hot air balloons at fairs. He folded his parachute into a backpack and the parachute was pulled from the pack by a static line attached to Th.